So I have an 11-year-old little girl, and she is probably one of the sweetest kids you'll ever meet. Um, she is, in most situations, super kind, very helpful, uh, inquisitive about the world in every way you can think of. As a matter of fact, she asks questions about everything. It can be, hey, where are we going? What time are we going to get there? What are you going to be wearing? What is mommy going to be wearing? What's daddy going to be wearing? What's sissy going to be wearing? Like literally ask questions about everything, right? And uh, if I'm honest, there are times where it stresses me out to have that many questions asked to me over every single situation. And there's nothing wrong with her asking questions. Um, sometimes one of the things that I think about is like, why does it stress me out? Like, why is it that when I get asked more than three questions about something, that instead of having the natural desire to um, feed into what she's asking for, because I know there's going to come a time where, especially depending on how I handle these questions now, that she'll stop asking me questions and that she'll go to somebody who is willing to give her the answers, whether it's the internet, whether it's her friends, whether it is another adult in her life. And if I'm honest, I don't want that. I want to be the answer guy for my 11-year-old girl, um, and for the rest of my kids. And that's something that has been on my mind like over the last, I don't know, man, maybe few years. And the next question that I ask myself is like, where did that come from? I think back even to my childhood, and there wasn't any like crazy situations where I'm like, man, I really had this terrible situation where I asked this question and I got beat up because I asked the question. But what I did experience is like my dad encouraged me to ask questions. He said, if you don't understand something, ask questions. And like that has led my quest for knowledge for the last 37 years. Like I went crazy with those questions. I'm sure that there was a time where 'kay, I don't know if you've ever had something that like you kind of have come to the conclusion of and you can like feel it in your soul. I know that there has been like some kind of situation where like I ask questions and I've been made fun of. Like I couldn't tell you the person or the people or like what time of my life it was, but I know for a fact that there was a period of time where like I was asking questions and somebody made me feel as if asking questions was a bad thing. Um, as a matter of fact, I can think of like a time whenever I was in first grade and there was this guy that I said this guy. There was this child. There was this child that like I was reading or whatever, and I had a tough time saying a couple of the words, and so the teacher had to help me. Uh, but in order to get that help, I had to ask for help, and the kid was like, "Oh, you're stupid. You can't even read." So I'm sure that there's been other situations throughout the course of my life that made me like like hate having to ask questions about things, um, which kind of led to like a private learning. Anyway, so here's what I'm saying. Like, I know that I've had some sort of negative interaction with that, and that has put me in a place now where if I get asked an abundance of questions, it produces kind of like this anxiety. And I don't mean like three, four, five questions or interview questions or, anything like that. But I mean like questions to where either it doesn't seem like it matters much or like questions back to back to back of things that I don't have the answer to. Um, it just stresses me out. And so there are times where I handle it really well and I'm super kind and I'm like, oh, well, these are the answers to the questions. But then there's other times where I'm like, almost kind of like in fight or flight mode. And I'm like, you got to get out of here. Leave me alone, which is terrible. Cause like I feel like as soon as it comes out, I'm like, oh, why did I say that? Um, And so, like, this actually inspired a post that I posted on Facebook last week. And so the post uh, just says, parents of kids 9 to 18 years old, what is one healthy and one unhealthy way that you've walked your kids through big emotions? Um, because a lot of times, whenever my 11-year-old is asking questions, it's in order to, at least what it feels like is that like she's preparing to be able to expect everything. So she's asking these questions almost kind of like a security blanket so that she can like know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, if somebody's going to be leaving, how long they're going to be gone, so that she can kind of like protect her own heart. So it's coming from these potential big emotions and these already expressed big emotions. So anyway, so I posted that post and I got a ton of great responses on both sides. Um, but as I have been thinking about like my past and why it is that like there's this anxiety that kind of like uh, curls up, um, it made me think about like what other people's like life experiences are with these same types of feelings. Uh, it's not, man, I saw this really good post um, a couple of days ago, and this lady was doing an interview, and she said something along the lines of, if you describe me as a villain in a certain situation that we've had going on, it's not going to be my first reaction to say that I wasn't the villain, because it's very possible that in the middle of whatever situation that was going on, that I did become the villain for a period of time. Um, but the question that it makes me ask is, uh, what happened to drive me to that point? And, one of the things that I believe strongly is that yes, there are people that make poor choices. There are parents that make decisions that they regret. There are kids that make choices that they regret. Um, but there's almost always a reason as to why it is that those things are happening. So, like for me, one of the reasons why it brings so much anxiety to me is because of negative past feelings, right? Um, and for other people, it may be something different. And the best thing that we can do is look to deconstruct like some of the like life experiences that we had, um, and deconstruct like those parts of it that weren't true or that weren't healthy, and then rebuild like strong, healthy emotions. But one of the best ways to be able to do that is by sharing, right? Is by sharing your life experiences with people who could potentially benefit from them. Like one of the reasons why I love being a dad is because I get to like walk my healing out in real time with my kids, to where my 15-year-old son doesn't have to wonder if it's okay to like be vulnerable about the mistake that you made and then apologize in the instances that you need to apologize for, or to stand like on the truth. If you didn't do anything wrong, he knows that that's okay. But if I hadn't like walked these things out in front of my kids, then they wouldn't have that experience to be able to go back on. There are plenty of times where like I end up having to apologize to my kids, because I say something that's snappy to excuse me. I say something that's snappy to them, or I get upset with their mom in front of them. And I have to go back and say, I didn't handle that the right way. And it's not so that I look like the good guy, but it's because like the biggest place where like people find out the right and the wrong way of being able to do things is by watching people. We know that like even whenever you're born, and honestly, even before that, like you start to hear voices, you start to understand when feeding time is. You start to understand all kinds of different things from a very young age, but it's from hearing it from other people. Um, and it's not until like we get much older that we start to take in information for ourselves. And even then, it's just regurgitated facts from other people, right? And so one of the things that is beautiful about like being able to become whatever person, whatever version of person that you are, is that it's from everyone else. And I think that if we can find a way to put ourselves in a space with other people who have a desire to grow, other people who also don't lose, like somewhere along adulthood, we lose uh, the understanding that we still need to learn. Like it's almost like the monotony of the like continuous life. Like you get up, you take a shower, you eat breakfast, you go to work, you stay at work, you take a lunch break, you get off work, you either go hang out with friends or take time for your kids or, fill in the blank. And you do that, like you hit that about 25, 26, 27 years old, and you keep going through the same thing. You almost forget, hey, there is still so much of this world that I don't know about. There are still depths of relationships that I don't know how to quite get past. I can't get past that concrete foundation to be able to get through to start digging deeper and deeper. And the best way for us to be able to do that is to put ourselves in positions to where we can ask questions, we can be vulnerable, and we can feel free to grow. And so in different people's life experiences, what we see is the beauty of change. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to create an atmosphere for my kids that they can turn into healthy adults, not perfect adults, but healthy adults that have healthy relationships, that have healthy emotional stability to where they understand that it's okay to get mad. As a matter of fact, we can expect that we're going to get mad. It's okay to be sad. Even as a man, it's okay to be sad. I want for them to be able to have a healthy outlook on life because they saw me and my wife model that for them. So anyway, so the post, going back to the post, it says, parents of kids 9 to 18, what is one healthy way and one unhealthy way that you've walked with your kids to be able to process big emotions? And I got a good amount of responses on both sides. I'm not going to say the names just because I told people that I wouldn't. But these are some what I thought were pretty eye-opening things just based on like people's perspective, and not just their perspective, but their life experience. And so I'm super appreciative to all those that contributed to the post. I did take it down because, again, I didn't want to start reading it and then people go back and be able to see who it is that said it, especially if they're not in a place where they've started to like be okay with people being able to see it or whatever. But anyway, so I'm gonna read these off, and then yeah, we'll see where we go from there. So the first one was, or it says, I'm not a parent, but I can say one of the most hurtful things I experienced from 9 to 18 was being told I was being dramatic. acting like a drama queen, or too much to deal with. It really baked into my subconscious that my emotions were far too big and expansive for anyone else to deal with, let alone love. This manifested into my adulthood as being terrified of vulnerability because I feared it would leave me in rejection. I also have to fight with always feeling like too much and can only receive love once I tone down. Something else that was added to it was it's also important to note that this is 100% internalized misogyny because the feedback oftentimes is for girls. The next one says raising kids with big baffling behaviors. It's actually a book recommendation. Anyway, so the name of the book is Raising Kids with Big Baffling Behaviors. It's on Audible if you want to see that. Anyway, so the next one is, let me see. Okay, so they name off unhealthy strategies first. Anger outburst, depression, sadness, unexpected excitement. So the first one with the anger outburst, one of the unhealthy strategies or ways they dealt with it was they were being authoritative and demanding. Also, with depression and sadness, they didn't sympathize with their feelings. And then with the unexpected excitement, not validating their joy. Man, like there's so many things that can be said about those things. So, like, just to kind of give you an idea, like, I clarified that for them, like as far as what it is that I meant by having big emotions, because that can look different for different people. So some of the things that I described were like emotional outburst, uncontrollable sadness or anger, unexpected intense excitement, and man, I feel like I'm the weirdo that like almost needs like a heads up on the excitement just when it comes out of nowhere. Just anyway. So some of the healthy things that they've done were things like for anger outbursts, they were patient and stayed calm. For the depression and sadness, they recognize that their sadness and depression is a true emotion, whether I can relate or not. And then with the unexpected excitement, they embraced the moment with them and they taught them how to keep themselves under control, but still be excited. Man, these are such good suggestions for these specific things. The next person said, oof, this hits home. We've been struggling with an extremely headstrong little girl. So one of the things that they suggested is asking others for help, also to utilize school resources, counselors. Sometimes they just need to talk to another adult. Their little girl has been more difficult with their emotional outburst than their sons were. And it's been extremely difficult. But one of the things that's helped them is knowing that other parents are also kind of struggling with the same thing. And then they also said seeking counseling for themselves is something that has been beneficial also. The next one says, as somebody who suffers with mental illness and has outbursts, they kind of let them go. She said, I give them all the time that they need to say anything and everything. It can be hard because sometimes it's about me, but usually the gist of it is at school. So it's things like friends, high school pressures. And when they listen, they don't judge. And once we know that they are done, they talk about it. We don't make them sit if they are standing and vice versa. We just leave them in their space. It's a process and it can suck, but sometimes we have to get out what we need to let out. This only happens a couple of times a year, like once per child. I'm just like, I'm thinking out loud how much of a challenge that would be for me. And I guess that's kind of the point though, right? Like when it comes to and guys, I'm sorry. This podcast is kind of it's kind of all over the place, but it's just because like this specific topic when it comes to like building healthier relationships through our emotions is something that like hits super hard for me um in a real scattered way. Um it's not like all of these things are like all of these perspectives are so valid, man. They're so valid. Like it'd be really hard for me to just like sit there and let my kids say, whatever within reason. Who knows though? Maybe that might be something that's beneficial, especially to some of my kids that struggle a little bit more with those bigger emotions out loud. So anyway, so the next one says, it depends on the situation and child. I remind my kids all the time emotions are all good. It's our actions that matter. Never act on emotions. Make decisions in a calm and logical way. My 13-year-old is an introvert. She thinks deeply. I just let her calm down on her own, and I'm mindful that she isn't going to do anything harmful. Sometimes she needs to be talked with, a quiet sit down with me or her dad. Her dad is the best. I'm high energy and become too talkative, which I'm sure doesn't help. My 12-year-old is high energy and impulsive. I find the more firm and the less said is the best. I believe it breaks a lot of her impulsive behaviors. Too much talk and coddling only makes her impulsive behaviors worse and risk taking advantage or manipulating. Um, okay, yeah, I appreciate all of this perspective. I'm sure those that wrote will be able to kind of tell who's who. So anyway, so the next one says I have had to check myself about correcting behavior when my kids are in their emotional or survival state. I've heard that like when you're when your kids are in the middle of like either throwing fits or having this giant emotional moment, that they can't really hear you anyway. So it didn't do any good to like be yelling or give them instruction. It's just best to get them to calm down. So anyway, this person says when kids are amped up, it's best to calm them down before you try and stop the behavior. I was so used to stopping the noise. Ooh, I've done that. I was so used to stopping the noise that I wouldn't consider the fact that my kid was unable to quite, unable to quit the tantrum on their own. Once things are calm and collected, we have a talk about what we could do to better handle whatever the situation may be. Consequences for the behaviors usually come naturally. Okay. So the next one is, let me see. Oh man, that one got cut short. It'll be all right. Anyway, so the next one is if I can catch the big emotions before the outburst, then that's a win because then I have, I'm sorry, let me restart that. If I can catch the big emotions before the outburst, then that's a win because then I can help navigate those big feelings with communication. My 12-year-old has a struggle with big emotions her entire life. Um, I'm not quite sure what this is, but DX, DMDD, and ADHD. If you know what the DMDD is, go ahead and maybe put in the comments. Anyway, so they said we also have fostered for 10 years. I have a lot, but I'll stick to some big nuggets. And the only one that ended up being able to go completely through because I only screenshotted certain part of it is the healthy. But it says this or that simple choices, giving power and control to the child, changing the physical environment to help refresh the brain, feeding the brain, aka offering a snack, let me see, validating that the feelings suck, and if I had power to make the situation better, I would, for things that are out of my control. Reviewing circle of control versus out of our control. Asking lots of questions to gain their perspective. Physically getting lower with the child. The next one says, I say having patience and actually listening to the child. Try to see it through their eyes and then talk in a calm, loving manner. Let them know they can tell you anything and really try to hear where they're coming from. Then your parental advice can be heard. Oh, okay. So I did get the rest of it. Let me see. Okay, so what the unhealthy version of that one before was saying was losing it, not being mindful of my sensory input overload as a parent. Man, that's a big one. Missing the opportunity for prevention by spending quality child-led time with my kids. Tone of voice that is short, lectures that make the child feel like she isn't enough, or focus on things to be critical rather than showing gratitude for the good things. Man, that one right there is really hard to do. Really hard to do. At least for me. Okay, let me see. There's one more. One more. So the last one, the person says, I think it's so important to teach kids that it's okay to cry or be upset for a length of time, but then to redirect their thoughts to truth. Maybe teach them a confession to pray over themselves when they're overwhelmed. God knows that what I have to do, God knows, God knows that, God knows that's what I have to do, and I still feel overwhelmed by life sometimes. When we teach them to remember to speak loving words, affirming words, and encouraging words, emotions come back into alignment with the truth. So, man, there's a lot of great suggestions, and honestly a little freedom in knowing that I'm not the only one that didn't do it right. Anyway, man, I hope that I hope that this provides some perspective to those that maybe kind of struggle in this area, and I hope that this is something that maybe provided some suggestions to those that maybe haven't found the answer that they're looking for when dealing with big emotions and trying to lead our kids in a healthy way. I know that this was different, and I hope it's something that's still useful. Yeah, just leave me in the comments. What did you think of this? Like, what did you think of the topic?